So one of the things about trying to be self-sufficient while living in a tiny house is that your living space is in constant flux. Your living space is a rotation of your harvest in different forms. You're drying, curing, fermenting, going from one stage to the next on its way to being stored some way out of the immediate living space. But usually during the season, the first floor of my house is taken up by various stages of my produce being used or on its way to being preserved in some way. There's boxes and bags of fresh produce, there's dried crops, there's fermenting crops. It's chaotic, but in a tiny house, this is the only space I can keep things.
So it is approaching the solstice right now, and so things are just growing like crazy. We've had a few days of lots of rain and clouds, which was not good for the vineyard because the varieties that are susceptible to bunch rot are just rotting like crazy. So probably not going to get much of a harvest off of those varieties, but the garden and everything else is just going crazy now that it's sunny out today after all this rain. Got just a good soaking rain. Hot out too today, and it's going to be hot for the next several days. So all those things like peppers and tomatoes and hopefully eggplant are growing super fast, just like doubling in size almost every day because of all the sunlight we're getting. And it's a good time, like things are producing. Just harvested like a whole huge bowl of snow peas, and I'm waiting for the shelling peas to come, and I'm hoping that they will produce before I leave for Florida next week because I don't want them to ripen while I'm gone because I really I planted a lot of them and I'm hoping to get enough to like freeze and have a good backstock. The ones out in the vineyard that are these lacy lady peas plants that I planted those later than these ones in the garden. So I think those ones are probably not going to be ripe until I get back from Florida. So I should be okay with those. But there's a bunch of green arrow, I think, back here, and those are shelling peas, and seems like the timing might work out that they're ready to harvest while I'm in Florida. So hopefully not. If they all ripen while I'm in Florida and they're too far gone by the time I get back, I'll just have to save them for seed for next year. It also seems like this is not a smoke day, so we might get some really clear weather coming up, and right around the solstice, that's just going to put everything into overdrive. Everything's going to be growing like crazy after this rain, so that's good. We're in a good spot.
One of the things I have to do from time to time is downsize. My tiny house is so small, and when things back up, I have to deal with them. One of these things taking up space was some low wine I distilled from my wine last fall. Low wine is the product of the first distillation. It comes from what is known as a stripping run, where the goal is to quickly distill the bulk of alcohol from your starting must, which in this case was some wine that was getting too old and oxidized to drink. So in this process, I'm redistilling the low wine to get the much more concentrated hard liquor, as much as 180 proof, that will then eventually become brandy. It's the peak of the season and the tomatoes are going nuts. This variety is called Sheboygan and is an heirloom from Wisconsin. This is the year for me to make salsa, so I'm going to be using a bunch of these in salsa. This one I think is like Cherokee chocolate, maybe? One of those. And this one is the Santorini Italian tomato used for sauce. It's deeply lobed and has a lot of seeds, so to use it for sauce definitely requires a food strainer. This plain-looking tomato is another Italian heirloom called Principe Borghese, which is known for sun drying. I've been keeping up with suckering them to encourage them to put more energy into fruiting. The sweet corn is coming along strong, thanks to the electric netting I string around my gardens now. They're forming nice big ears that will be ready soon. I think I've determined that I don't want to plant cauliflower anymore. Because although I like it, it just takes up way too much space for the amount of food that I get. And then it all ripens at the same time, and I'm overwhelmed with cauliflower. Cabbages do much better, and they're worth the space. Chinese cabbage is doing well. These are various pole beans varieties. These are the Cargamento beans. Those are the ones I got from the store. And they are doing really well. And you can see down there is soybeans coming up in between them from the mulch, the soybean mulch. But some of these other things, this is a lima bean. You can kind of tell how it's different. The leaves are different type. They're like flatter, not as like ruffled as these ones are. I also noticed that something was getting into the garden netting and grazing on the bean vines up fairly high, indicating it's white-tailed deer. Over here, these are the onions. They're almost to the point of finishing up. They're putting on that last little growth spurt to get big before they start flopping over and dying. This is another sweet corn variety here, which I'm hoping will not get eaten by raccoons. These are some carrots that I planted earlier in the season, and they're doing pretty well. I guess maybe I'm keeping the rabbits out now because these are not getting eaten by anything. The eggplant is finally starting to take off. Got some more peppers over here. These are some hot peppers. I still have frozen eggplant, roasted eggplant that I need to start eating. But this stuff, I keep it under row cover for the first part of its life, and like this stuff probably like tripled in size in the last few days. This bed over here is the popcorn, and if it does well and doesn't get eaten by raccoons, I'm gonna get quite a bit of popcorn off of this and be able to supply myself for a large part of the year. It's just starting to tassel right now. My pear tree is fruiting abundantly as it does every season. This variety called Moonglow makes perfect, delicious fruit in every season. The popcorn is in full tassel, and I come out daily to hand pollinate the ears to make sure they will be fully fertilized. Cabbages are headed up and almost ready to harvest. This lower bed of sweet corn is also getting close to harvest with the ears fully silked out and pollinated. And no sign of raccoons yet, so the electric netting is holding up. That bed of pole beans continues to grow and fill out the trellises, but the deer are keeping parts of them pruned and interfering with the potential crop. Chinese cabbages are almost ready to harvest. There's actually one at the end there that I think needs to be harvested. These cabbages are so much more productive than the cauliflower. There's one that was a fairly large head. I did not blanch it. The harvest from the vineyard is abundant and giving me more tasks back at home to work on, like canning. Actually, the harvest is overwhelming. I can't possibly eat this much produce, unfortunately. But I'm not complaining. I eat what I can. Another downsizing effort is processing these chickpeas that I've had for a while, but know I won't use in their whole form. So I found a kami, meaning community-owned, flour mill, and decided to grind these into the much more usable gram flour, which I know I'll make use of. At first I wasn't sure if this mill would be able to grind this large of a thing, but I realized you just have to adjust the settings. This flour that is kicking out is really warm. I'm going to keep going, but I've got quite a bit of gram flour. So one of the great things about being able to turn dry chickpeas into gram flour is that gram flour is significantly more expensive than chickpeas and a lot harder to come by. Like ordering gram flour over the internet or something, or even buying it at like an Indian or other specialty food store is going to be pretty expensive. And so chickpeas are really cheap, and I can just turn a pile of chickpeas into this gram flour that I can use to make pakoras and all kinds of other delicious foods. So that's what I'm going to do with this. I'm not a huge fan of chickpeas. I do cook them up from time to time, but it's
pretty rare, and I'm much more likely to use gram flour than I am to use chickpeas. And the other thing about the gram flour is that it's a much better vehicle for using up vegetables than chickpeas are, in my mind. Making pakoras and some other Indian foods that I'm just learning about now, I'm really going to make use of this gram flour a lot more than the chickpeas that I had. So they do have garbanzo beans here in the grocery store, and they're about $3 a pound, but I just also noticed that they have garbanzo flour, which I hope is good. I don't know how old that stuff is, but I'll have to look at how much the garbanzo flour is. I had no idea that they had gram flour here, but that's good to know. So I thought I would experiment with grinding some of these regular shelling pea seeds down. I didn't really have much of another use for them, so I ground them into this flour. I have like so many extra, like I ground a bunch of these. I went away for the time when these were ready to harvest as shelling peas, unfortunately, and by the time I got back, they had gone to past their prime, so I just decided to keep them as seeds, but there's just so many seeds, and I figure I might as well try to eat them, so I ground them into this flour, which I could mix with the gram flour in making pakoras or other things like that. So that's probably what I'm going to do. I don't know if I just forget that it's difficult to grow early season carrots here, or if I just think that things are going to be different some year, but like this is all the waste that I got from this batch of carrots that I harvested. For a whole bed, this is all the carrot matter that I got, and even this stuff isn't really pure. I mean, there's maggot fly damage on most of these, and probably can't use most of these anyways because there's like tunnels riddled through them. Like that one's not even worth it. But also, most of the carrots couldn't grow long because the bottoms of them were sitting in water because we've gotten so much rain. And so the bottoms of them just kind of rotted, and I had to cut the bottoms off. So otherwise the rot will spread through the whole carrot, but it also does start and spread from the maggot, carrot maggot fly tunnels and goes through the rest of the carrot. So I don't know, that one's probably not even worth it either. See, it's got like through the middle of it, it's got a tunnel of rot. So, and that's from the water, too much rain. Getting tons of cabbage in right now. I got to eat it as quickly as possible. That's eggplant that's been in my freezer since last year, and I got to eat that. It's roasted eggplant, smoky. And lately I've been using this for like a breakfast food. There's something called teppanyaki, I think it's, or okonomiyaki, that's breakfast food in Japan, and they use a lot of cabbage in it. So it's a great thing, and I love just fried cabbage. Thanks to that electric netting, it's been another good year for my sweet corn. I thought that something was getting in there, but I think it was just a deer earlier in the season, and it took down a couple of my flower corn stalks. It hasn't been messing with things since, and so I'm getting a full crop of sweet corn, which looks really good, and it's been delicious too. Gonna be good. Had my first real harvest of tomatoes. I'd harvested, several, few days, like maybe a week ago or less, and just harvested all these today. I had to harvest these ones early because they were getting eaten by something, probably raccoons, because these tomato plants are not fenced in this year, which maybe was a mistake because they do seem to be getting nibbled on. More summer squash and cucumbers than I know what to do with. Probably gonna make some more cucumber salad out of some of these, but there's just way too many. Some of them are pickling cukes and some of them are salad slicing cukes. And then summer squash. It's just like way more than I know what to do with. I'm just gonna have to remember to plant less in future years.
When you're trying to homestead in a tiny house, you're constantly having to downsize because you just don't have room to put anything. You need to convert your produce into something that can either be stored without refrigeration or made smaller, or both. Everything is in flux all the time, so it's kind of a constant rotation of projects and processing of the harvest. You bring in a big harvest of something and you can't have it in the space for very long because you don't have enough space for a lot of stuff to back up. You can't just store things out of the way because there's minimal storage space. I do freeze some produce like tomatoes and stock them up until I have a big processing day, but you can see that my house has these carboys of wine often, because wine needs a long time to sit between rackings, so it can take up space in my house and my root cellar. I've had these beans and corn sitting here in bowls or bags for months while I continue to harvest off the plants and also wait for them to dry because I can't just store them until they've thoroughly dried down or they'll mold. So as such, my house is always filled with these various processing projects, whether it's wine or dried crops or fresh veggies. And I also have minimal fridge space, so I have to rotate through any fresh produce because I just don't have room for it in my fridge. So this requires processing and preservation, thus my shelves full of canned foods. It's not exactly ideal to be living in this way, but it's a reality of living in a small space and trying to be self-sufficient as possible. You have to find ways to shrink things, to convert them into a different product that can be stored in the freezer, or put in a jar, or stored on a shelf without refrigeration, or put in the root cellar without refrigeration. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to get notified when I post new content. Also share and give a like to the video. If you'd like to support my channel, a great way to do that is to become a patron on Patreon. I've also been uploading some exclusive content for patrons and will continue to do so. But I'll also provide these free videos on my channel. See you soon with more updates on my life in an eco-village.